Boom! It's time for Draconic to come back into the meta, and I'm so excited for it, guys. Especially because Tome of Imperial Flame was left out from the last ban list, and I really speculate on this card maybe being one of the best cards for the upcoming Draconic meta, and I know a lot of you disagree on this because I actually made a video already about this card, and yeah, a lot of you were commenting on this that Tome of Imperial Flame is basically a bad card, right? Because you -1 from it, right? I mean, if you're royal instead, draw 2 cards, and then you need to pitch 2 cards. I mean, can't you read the card? It's basically -1, right? Okay, guys, we will talk about this exactly in this video. We will not only talk about why Tome of Imperial Flame, could be potentially the best card or one of the best cards in the next meta with the Hunted when we get the new Draconic heroes and new Draconic support. But for a second, let's admire actually the Draconic hero that we still have in the meta. My all-time favorite Draconic Ninja Fire Rising Rebellion. And when looking at my channel, I actually noticed that we had so many different Fire Rising Rebellion videos already throughout his existence in the CC meta, and it was an up and down all the time, right? Fire was the best deck when he came out, right? 2 years ago here. One of my best performing videos actually with Sebastian Grondale, who piloted to the first place at the European Champions Battle, alongside with Sander Neeft winning the Calling Utrecht with Fire Rising Rebellion 2, and then an emergency ban happening in Flesh and Blood, banning Starby Hammerers. Also, Fi was piloted to the top 8 of the first World Championship by Rob Catton, following the next year where Fi taking 2 spots in the World Championship in Barcelona with top 8 by Daniele Frattarelli, and actually Fire Rising Rebellion won the second World Championship, piloted by Alex from Greece. So after that, when looking at the Living Legend leaderboard, Fi has nearly 800 points, but when looking at the last season with Rosetta, he was actually one of the worst performing heroes when looking at the legal heroes here in Classic Constructed, alongside with Uzuri. Guys, I think it's time for Fire Rising Rebellion to change the strategy up again and find the new way into the meta and get those last 204 Living Legend points. Guys, I really want to hear your opinion on this in the comments. Be nice. Don't hate comment here. But let's switch actually to this comparison here, because before coming to a few combo ideas that I have with Tome of Imperial Flame, I want to talk about actually plussing off of cards in trading cards, and especially in a comparison with Yu-Gi-Oh, because I have a background in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm very used to Yu-Gi-Oh players saying, oh yeah, I get a +1 off of this card, that's amazing. And now in Flesh and Blood we also say, we want a plus off of cards, but in Flesh and Blood it's a little bit different than in Yu-Gi-Oh. But I think especially having these tomes here and other cards like Blood Rush Bellow, it is very interesting to look at this comparison and then also see why we are not only evaluating cards in Flesh and Blood off of how many cards we are drawing off of them, but rather how many value points we are gaining by playing certain cards. And when looking at Tome of Imperial Flame that way, I think it is a lot of the different story than just looking at how many cards we are plussing off of this card. So let's jump into that. And like I said, guys, we're not only looking at this comparison in this video, that's maybe also why this is a little bit longer, but I'm really, really excited about this. We will also look at Fire Rising Rebellion, of course, but we will also speculate a little bit on what maybe Tome of Imperial Flame could do to the other new Draconic Royal heroes that we are getting in the next set, the Hunted. So let's jump into it. Let's start actually by looking at the card that started it all, right? Pot of Greed. Because actually Pot of Greed is the the heart, so to say, of these kind of effects. And when we are looking at Pot of Greed, it's pretty simple, right? It just says draw 2 cards. But let's look at it from a more technical point of view. So you're getting a plus X cards, in this case a +1 effect, you're getting 1 plus card. And then you also have no limitation on it. So you can basically play Pot of Greed, and when you are drawing a new Pot of Greed off of the Pot of Greed, then you can just activate that new Pot of Greed again. And also it's a generic when talking in Flesh and Blood terms here, so you can just include Pot of Greed in any deck that you want to. Guys, I need to take a sip at the moment. I'm freaking out about this topic here. Then, of course, Pot of Greed was banned, and there were new pots coming. And then one of the next pots that we have seen is Pot of Avarice, actually. Pot of Avarice is similar, very similar to Pot of Greed, but it is different. And they try to make it a little bit more complicated to get that +1 effect off by making Pot of Avarice a conditional effect. Basically, you needed 5 monster cards in your graveyard to activate Pot of Avarice, and then also you needed to shuffle those 5 monsters back into your deck to then being able to draw 2 new cards. So actually what turned out to be a downside, it's actually an upside, because you are getting those 5 monster cards from your graveyard back into your deck, and so you are you're countering fatigue, right? Fatigue is not really that widely played strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh, but when speaking in Flesh and Blood terms, you can say something like that, right? But also, here comes in something very interesting when we compare these 2 pots together. Because when you are drawing a Pot of Greed off of a Pot of Greed, that's amazing, right? But when you are drawing a Pot of Avarice off of the Pot of Avarice, it can be meh. Because when you don't have 5 monster cards again to shuffle back into your graveyard, the Pot of Avarice is dead until you have 5 monster cards again in your graveyard. So that card was banned too. It was pretty OP. But then we had 2 other pots, right? There are also more pots, I know, but we want to make it a little bit less complicated here and see these 2 pots here again, because Pot of Desires is actually a card, that's very similar to Pot of Greed. You can even see the artwork of Pot of Greed here and the artwork of Pot of Avarice here too. So I don't know, guys, but basically they introduced here a term that's a hard once per turn. So they wrote on the card you can only activate 1 Pot of Desires per turn. So they were making sure you can only really activate once, even if you draw another one. So that basically meant it was not only a hard once per turn, but it was really bad if you play Pot of Desires and then draw another Pot of Desires. Okay, there were a lot of decks when I was active in Yu-Gi-Oh! That like to play Pot of Desires, but technically speaking, it is a -1, right? Because you need to banish 10 cards from the top of your deck face down to actually draw those 2 cards. And so, even though technically going -8 Pot of Desires can be really good, because those 2 cards you're drawing can pretty much win you the game. Also, looking at Pot of Duality here, a very different pot. Also looking at this artwork, Pot of Greed is in here. Okay. It is basically not a +1. It's basically a -1 when you look at it like that. Because basically you're looking at the next 3 cards on top of your deck, and then you can choose one of them and take it into your hand. But why would you really play a card like this, even though you're technically -1? It is good for decks that don't need to special summon, because it says specifically Pot of Duality can only be activated because you cannot special summon afterwards. So why would you really play something like this? Of course, when you don't want to special summon, there are other strategies that you want to go along. Maybe you're playing a stun deck. Maybe you're playing Gravekeepers. And in those decks specifically, you can find a combo piece, or you can find a Floodgate or a good other trap card and set it face down and having a good play that way. So, just some examples here. And now coming to Flesh and Blood, because actually there are some similarities here with these cards. Especially when looking at the history of Flesh and Blood, the first tome that we actually saw was Tome of Aetherwind, right? And when just looking at it from a basic standpoint, Tome of Aetherwind is pretty similar to Pot of Greed. Let's look at it from a technical standpoint here. It is not once per turn, right? So you can play Tome of Yendal, and when you draw another Tome of Yendal and you have enough action points, you can just play another Tome of Yendal, right? It is also generic, so you can just play it in any deck that you like. But like I said, it really only is broken for decks that have access to multiple action points. Also, I found it really interesting here that they choose to not only give Tome of Yendal the draw 2 card effect, but also make it a life gain effect. So that's on top of the draw effect. Also a consideration here because we are counting value points, right? Also, yeah, they try to make it a little bit more difficult here to play this card out because that is a difference between Flesh and Blood and Yu-Gi-Oh, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh, you can basically, in most cases, just play out your card without paying any resources. In Flesh and Blood, most of the cards have resource costs, just like Tome of Yendal. So you needed a resource to play it out, but for that, you're having Tunic, for example, or you are just pitching a blue and using one of those resources gaining to play out the Tome of Yendal. Also, of course, we need to look at the block value of those cards in Flesh and Blood. Compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, you're not really blocking in Yu-Gi-Oh, but in Flesh and Blood, that's a really, really important topic to talk about because Tome of Yendal actually blocks for 2. So if you are not playing out Tome of Yendal, at least you can block 2 points of value with it. Okay, guys, the basic tome, so to say, the Tome of Yendal, banned already in Flesh and Blood. Let's look actually at a card that is not Tome of Yendal or another tome, but Blood Rush Bellow, because Blood Rush Bellow also says if the discarded card has 6 or more power, draw 2 cards, and Blood Rush Bellow gains go again. So also a Pot of Greed effect, so to say. Here with this card, also from the first set of Flesh and Blood, they made it conditional, yeah? So you need to have a card with 6 power in your hand, and that needs to be the card that you discard to the graveyard in order to draw these 2 cards. So it's a downside, or it's a loop that you need to jump through in order to get this effect off, right? It's actually an upside though, when you look at it from a root standpoint, and especially from these days where we have so many 6 power cards available, you're basically just turning on your Rhina or your KO effect with the Blood Rush Bellow instead of having to worry about not discarding a 6 power attack. But and that is a thing that we need to talk about when talking about Tome of Imperial Flame here next. It can be bad, when you are having 2 Blood Rush Bellows in your hand and you are playing the 1 Blood Rush Bellow and then you're discarding the 1 Blood Rush Bellow left in your hand. That can be really bad. But when you're drawing a new Blood Rush Bellow off of the 1 Blood Rush Bellow that you just played, it can be pretty bonkers, right? I know that feeling myself. I played KO a few times and it's just amazing. Also, they made it here so they, making sure that not every deck can interact with Blood Rush Bellow by making it a Brute card, so only Brute decks can play it. Also, coming to the value points here when talking about these effects in Flesh and Blood, basically what Blood Rush Bellow says is you are gaining +2 power on every Brute attack this turn. And that basically means, depending on how many attacks you're firing off in this turn, you're getting 4 to 6 attack points or power points in this turn. So basically, you're not only drawing 2 cards, but you're also getting these value points off of the effect. And then you are, depending on what you draw, having 12 plus attack power off of these 2 cards you are drawing. So basically, it's like 16 to 18 points that you can count on with Blood Rush Bellow, and that makes it such a good card, right? No one would say, oh, Blood Rush Bellow is a bad card because I technically going -1 with it because I need to pitch a card, I need to discard a card, and I need to play the Blood Rush Bellow, right? No Brute player would ever say this. No Brute player would ever say this, right? So, like I said, it's conditional. It really depends on how many attacks you can fire off, if you have a wild ride and stuff like that. But basically, Blood Rush Bellow is a loved card all in all. So we have Tome of Imperial Flame here, of course, the centerpiece of this video. But I also want to touch on Tome of Aetherwind here, because I don't really think you can compare it one-of-one with, the pots in Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think looking at Tome of Yendal, like I said, it's pretty similar to Pot of Greed to me. Tome of Aetherwind is also, it's basically Pot of Greed for Kano boys, right? It's crazy. These cards were all legal at a time in Flesh and Blood, and you can just see that these cards are all legal in Living Legend, right? And Kano just, rasiert, as we say it in German, right? Kano has just rasiert the Living Legend Battle Hardened at the World Championship, and that just shows the power of these cards. But let's not drift away here, guys. The Tome of Aetherwind is also, interesting to look at this video, I think, because we can compare the power level and also making sure that we know why Tome of Imperial Flame could be bonkers in the future, right? I'm not saying go and buy out all the Tome of Imperial Flames because 100% this will be the best card. I'm just speculating on maybe we can utilize this card in a certain way to make it good and make it work for Fi or one of the other Draconic heroes. So with Tome of Aetherwind, basically in Kano, you want to go combo faster, right? You want to draw cards and combo off. Basically, it's Pot of Greed, I said that already. And also, it's a way that you can also utilize this card very good if you can pitch stack it. It's, of course, only good for wizards, but that made it such a good card. You didn't even need one resource to play out this card. It's crazy. Also blocks 2. And looking at Tome of Imperial Flame here, at a basic point, right? The first downside is this card doesn't even have a block value. So if you don't want to play this out, it's not really that great in your hand, right? Okay, so also technically it's -1. That's right. I don't want to make up that it's technically not a -1 because you're playing out Tome of Imperial Flame, you're drawing 2 cards if you're royal, and then you need to pitch 2 cards. So basically, just looking at it from this way, it's a -1. But we will talk about why you can make it, so it is a +1. Potentially, Also, I think it can be really bad if you draw another Tome of Imperial Flame off of the effect of Tome of Imperial Flame. And I think it can be especially bad when it happens when you consider playing it in Fi or maybe one of the other Draconic heroes in the future. Also, it's only really good for the Royal Draconics. So in terms of the new Draconics, they are Royal inherently. But when you want to play it in Fi, you need to play the Crown of Dominion alongside with it. But also, it's really interesting because we saw a Draconic hero in the past utilizing Tome of Imperial Flame to her fortile. Sorry guys, I'm missing the English word at the moment. You know what I mean, right? So basically because you were generating 2 ash off of the pitching with the 2 red cards, it was really good in Draw My Ash Artist. And so just looking at the pool we have now, it doesn't really seem that Fire Rising Rebellion would love to play Tome of Imperial Flame, right? Especially when looking at past cards that he played, like Tome of Firebrand, which was the Draconic tome for a long time, but is banned now too, because basically Fi was playing his chain links, and when he got to the 4th chain link, then he basically just played out the Tome of Imperial Flame, maybe even off of a tunic counter, draw 2 cards, and then go even wider. Then also we had a card called Art of War, also a card that is banned now in Flesh and Blood, a card that worked really well in Fire Rising Rebellion, because you were drawing 2 cards, and you are also gaining +1 power on every attack action that you're playing in this turn. We don't have these cards anymore to utilize in Fire Rising Rebellion, and so we need to find new ways to make Fi good again. And like I said, there is a way with Crown of Dominion and Tome of Imperial Flame to play out to your advances here. Also looking at Crown of Dominion, of course, there are other headpieces that were much more favored in the past for Fire Rising Rebellion, like the Mask of Momentum, or especially the Mask of the Pouncing Links. But that doesn't mean that these 2 options are always the best option for Fire Rising Rebellion. I'm not saying that Crown of Dominion just because of this video is the best headpiece for Fire Rising Rebellion, don't get me wrong. But I think there is a way to utilize this alongside also, thinking about this interaction here. You also have the gold token on board that you maybe draw a card off as well when popping off. Of course, Cash-In is banned, another Pot of Greed here in Flesh and Blood. Of course, because when looking at this, I think it would be super bonkers here in the next meta having Cash-In legal for a Classic Constructed. So I'm really happy that they banned it in advance. But like I said, Fire Rising Rebellion just out right off the bat doesn't really seem to have that much of an advance like Draw My Ash Artist, yeah, by playing Tome of Imperial Flame, of course. So we need to find a way to bypass the -1 card by playing Tome of Imperial Flame. And that's the next part in this video, guys, because actually I want to make another comparison here by showing certain interactions in Flesh and Blood that made them that cards were not really a minus effect when playing them. I want to start with this interaction here that you all loved in the last meta, right? In the early and mid of this year 2024 with playing Art of War in Zen. You just blocked with Stride of Reprisal, you got a Crouching Tiger in your hand, and you just banned that tiger for your Art of War effect. We all love that, right? Also, looking at Blood Rush Bellow again here. Before we had Savage Sash, we were playing Tunic to pay the 1 resource for the Blood Rush Bellow. And also, now that we have Savage Sash, we see that these class strategies that Flesh and Blood has are supported also by giving certain classes certain equipment pieces. And in the case of Brood here, I think these 3 cards alongside are just representing why it can be so powerful to set up a huge turn to play out these cards together by maybe having Savage Sash alongside your Blood Rush Bellow turns and maybe even discarding a Beast Within for the Blood Rush Bellow effect. These are in all interactions that we already have. And I don't think I want to say that we are not having an interaction yet or that we are not getting a new interaction with Tome of Imperial Flame and the Draconic heroes in the next set or in the next meta. Also, some other examples here that we had by turning your disadvantage from your draw cards into advantages for your heroes are Tome of Aetherwind and Orion of Mystic Tenets. Let's come to Orion of Mystic Tenets here. It costs 4 to It costs 4 to play out. You can only play it once because it's a legendary. And also, if you pitch a chi to it, you can draw 3 cards instead of only 2 cards. Yeah, it's pretty bad, right? Because you need the chi in your hand and it's pretty difficult to get a chi. And okay, guys, we know this is bullshit, right? It was so amazing, to cash in either your Traverse to get the chi in the hand and play out your Orion that way, or you are just transcending, having a chi in your hand that way, gaining the 1 resource off of 12 Petal Kasaya and just having 4 resources to play out Orion of Mystic Tenets and drawing 3 cards. Yeah, pretty bad downside on Orion of Mystic Tenets, right? Also a pretty bad downside on Tome of Aetherwind, right? It's only an action. There's no go again. It's so bad to play out this card. You can't really do anything. Okay, Kano comes in, right? I just play out my instant, paying 3, looking at Tome of Aetherwind on top of my deck, playing it as an instant, drawing 2 cards. Oh, I have another tome. I'm playing that too, right? Oh, I don't have enough resources. Oh yeah, I have 2 energy pots on my board. No problem. All right, guys, I don't really see a power level for Tome of Imperial Flame yet, like we have them with Tome of Aetherwind and Kano, or Traverse and 12 Petal Kasaya with Orion, or Stride of Reprisal and Art of War, but I'm saying maybe we have something here going on that we can utilize on. And also, I'm looking at Fire Rising Rebellion at the moment, but we are getting 2 new Draconic heroes that we don't know that much yet about. Maybe those 2 or one of them can really, really nicely play Tome of Imperial Flame without having to worry about the -1. And we even have an interaction yet in the meta, like I said, with Fire Rising Rebellion and his Phoenix Flames to maybe utilizing on those pitch to reds. Let's talk about the Phoenix Flame next in the video. But I want to touch on Syndra, or Irelia, as I like to call her. I can't really tell anything about Fang yet, but I think there is maybe a way with Syndra. But I'm not sure yet, because we don't have that much spoilers. But I just want to briefly touch on Syndra. And I also want to know your opinions here. Also, make sure to like the video if you like that content so far. So let's talk about Syndra. I think maybe you want to play Flick Knives with it. That's nothing new, right? You know all that already, but there's a card called Blood Runs Deep. That's a card we have been spoiled so far. And that card says this costs 1 less to play for each Draconic chain link you control. And it says when this attacks a hero, each dagger you control deals 1 damage to them. If damage is dealt this way, the dagger is the dagger has hit, destroy the daggers. Go again. It has a 3 block, very nice. It only attacks for 2 only. We know that is not a downside in Draconic, but in Draconic Ninja, sorry. But I'm just looking at the artwork here from Syndra. We see she has 6 daggers floating around her. I think it's 6, right? So I'm assuming she has a way to either generate daggers, just like, yeah, Zen with tigers. Maybe those daggers vanish. Maybe those daggers, yeah, are utilized to play Blood Runs Deep. So maybe you're generating in some kind of way 6 daggers on the board, and those are attacking for you. And then you are dealing, yeah, with Blood Runs Deep, you can deal 6 damage basically off of that. But maybe you don't generate those daggers on the board, but rather like you are generating them in your hand. And that way you could pitch those daggers. I'm just having crazy thought here, guys. Don't say this is the right way to think about it, but I'm just, yeah, making a theory up here. Maybe you can pitch those daggers to play out Tome of Imperial Flame. I don't really think that is the way you would play it, but I definitely think, yeah, in some kind of way, maybe you are generating daggers or equipping new daggers from your inventory. Let me know what you think, but like I said, I don't really see yet a strategy with Syndra or Fang, but I definitely see a way that you can maybe utilize, those Tome of Imperial Flames with Fi. And also, yeah, I want to remind you of the interaction with Flamescale Furnace and Tome of Imperial Flame, because that way you can also generate resources for your Draconic decks. And also considering you only want to play Tome of Imperial Flame really in a heavy redline deck, Flamescale Furnace can be really handy when needing extra resources. But like I said, the real question here is not only how can you bypass the -1 card play in Tome of Imperial Flame, but also the core question is how much extra value points can you generate off of playing Tome of Imperial Flame? Just like the value points you're looking at when playing Blood Rush Bellow or other cards. So the basics, yeah, I think we need to look at when considering Tome of Imperial Flame and Crown of Dominion for Fire Rising Rebellion is, of course, playing 3 Phoenix Flames. I also think you wouldn't really want to play 3 Tome of Imperial Flames, but maybe 2. Maybe you want to play 2 Tome of Imperial Flames. And then also I think you need to include, the recursion effects of cards that get you back your Phoenix Flames from the graveyard or that search you the Phoenix Flame from your deck. And we, at the moment, of course, have the inherent effect of Fire Rising Rebellion himself. He gets you back a Phoenix Flame from the graveyard to your hand, but we also have certain cards that we can choose from the Draconic pool already. And it's not said that we are not getting a new card that, lets us search for a Phoenix Flame or lets us recur a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard. Maybe even we get a new way to have red fodder in the Draconic decks and make Tome of Imperial Flame work that way. We don't know it yet, but I'm just looking at the card pool that we have now. And the 3 cards I would consider to play alongside Tome of Imperial Flame would be, of course, Flamecall Awakening and Rise from the Ashes, 2 cards that were already being utilized in Fire Rising Rebellion in the past. And players had great success playing these 2 cards in Fire Rising Rebellion. Also, we have a card called In Flame. It wasn't really played much yet, but I think you can consider it. Looking at it, it's not the best card, right? It only blocks for 2, it only attacks for 1, and you need to have played a red card before, and it's not really amazing, right? But it's a way to get back a Phoenix Flame and utilize Tome of Imperial Flame here. Also, like I said, don't forget, even though we don't have cash in anymore, Crown of Dominion also gains us a gold on the board. And when we don't need the resources from pitching 2 cards for a Tome of Imperial Flame, we still have 2 resources left to activate and crack our gold token. Or if we need the 2 resources, there are amazing cards that we can utilize these 2 resources on already, like Engulfing Flameweave. Shout out to Rob Cat in between here. He loves this card. Also, there are other cards that we already know that you want to play in Draconic, like Spreading Flames that cost 1 resource, and new cards like Art of the Dragon Fire or those other Art of Dragon cards that cost 1. And we even have cards that weren't utilized yet, but maybe can shine in the next meta. I'm not saying Liquefy will be the best card, but that is a card you can use a resource on in a Draconic deck. And it's not even that bad maybe in the next meta. Who knows? It wasn't really played yet. It wasn't worth it. But like I said, when talking about Fire-Raising Rebellion, I think we need to reconnect with him in a new way. We can't just look at him and say like, yeah, of course we play Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. Of course we want to make just a wide chain and that's all with Fi. I don't think Fi will work like that always. Of course, Fi wants to go wide and make as much attacks as possible. I think that will not change, but maybe the strategy will mix up again here with looking at the new card pool. Also, I think we need to consider the new strategies that we don't know yet. We know that we get a fealty token. We know that we get this marked synergy, but we don't know that much about it yet. But when looking at fealty, you can basically turn any card in the game that you can play in Fire-Rising Rebellion, either a generic or just a regular ninja card into a Draconic card. And so maybe also you want to play Command and Conquer and make it a Draconic. Maybe. We will look in a certain scenario here where that could be interesting, because there is actually an Art of the Dragon card, the Blood one, which says the next 3 Draconic cards will cost 1 less to play out. Also, we have Blood of the Drakai, which says when you pitch it, the next 3 Draconic cards cost 1 less to play. And when you can make Command and Conquer or other cards that cost you resources to play out into Draconics and reduce their cost to play out for 1, that's bonkers, just in theory, right? We don't know it yet practically, but we are just talking about the theory here, right, guys? Also, if you've liked it so far, like I said, of course, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, but if you're even interested in supporting the channel more, I also have a YouTube membership available, and also in the description, I have linked the Patreon down below. Also, let's look at some examples here now, because I actually, have thought about 2 ways that you can play out Tome of Imperial Flame here in Fire-Rising Rebellion. And if you are still in the video, thank you so much, because I think this is just, like, I'm not the best CC player, right? I haven't made any success in the game yet, but I think it's just super fun to talk about the theory and the possibilities here, because like I said, I just love the Draconic class in general and Fire-Rising Rebellion specifically. So what I'm looking at here is, we imagine we are, for a second, sorry guys. We are early in the game. We have Fire-Rising Rebellion, of course, as our hero with the Searing Ember Blade. We have the gold token off of the Crown of the Minion, and we have 3 counters on our Fiendal Spring Tunic. We have only 1 Phoenix Flame in the graveyard, keep that in mind. And then we are looking at our hand and our arsenal. We have a Tome of Imperial Flame in the arsenal, and we have these 4 cards in hand. So how can we make Tome of Imperial work in this situation here? And keep in mind, I think especially, the early game is maybe not the best way to play out Tome of Imperial Flame. That's also why I think maybe you only want to play 2 Tome of Imperial Flames in Fire-Rising Rebellion rather than playing 3. But this is an example how it could work in the early game, but I don't think it's the best way to play it out. So let's play Ronin Renegade at first. You're playing a red card with Go Again, 3 attacks, so you're having 3 points of value that we are counting in, and then you are cashing in the Tunic for the Flame Call Awakening here. The Flame Call Awakening now goes off and searches us a Phoenix Flame from the deck that we're getting into our hand, right? So basically, we have 1 Phoenix Flame already available to pitch to Tome of Imperial Flame without losing a card. Then we are playing out Blaze Headlong, which has Go Again. So we are counting 10 points of value already. And then we can cash in the Fire-Rising Rebellion effect, getting back the Phoenix Flame from the graveyard, and having 2 Phoenix Flame already to play out Tome of Imperial Flame. Drawing 2 cards, pitching the 2 Phoenix Flames, gaining 2 resources. And let's just imagine we are having either of these two cards here. Yeah, just the basic Draconic cards that we already have. Maybe there are even better cards that we want to include in the deck, but also we could maybe draw worse, right? We don't know it yet. We are just making an example up here, right? So off of the two resources that we are having from Tome of Imperial Flame, we are playing out the Engulfing Flame Wave, and if it hits, we are even getting another card off of the deck, right? But I'm assuming your opponent wants to block Engulfing Flame Wave, because Engulfing Flame Wave can be pretty nasty when it hits and you're maybe getting a Lava Burst, for example, from the top of your deck. But let's just assume, yeah, your opponent blocks the Engulfing Flame Wave, you don't get the effect off of it, then it's, yeah, you're playing these two cards again and then it's over, right? But just with this, you are getting 22 to 29 damage. Of course, the downside is now you don't have a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard anymore. Also, like I said, it's the early game state, and blindly toming can be really bad, right? Because when you're drawing bad cards, that's like what we are dependent on here, that you're drawing good cards off of Tome of Imperial Flame, right? When you're drawing bad cards, it really wasn't worth to play Tome of Imperial Flame. Also, you're not getting the Shuko effect in this line specifically here, because you don't have two attack value or lower value cards that you're playing out on a chain. And like I said, it also depends heavily on if Flame Wave, the Engulfing Flame Wave hits, and what you are revealing from the top of your deck. But in a heavy red line deck, where you're not playing that much attack reactions, it could be really good, actually. When you're having many attack actions in your deck that attack for 3 or more, can be really good. So just looking at the value points here, I think this is a decent line, but like I said, maybe there are better ways to play this out. Let me know what you think about it in the comments for sure. But let's come to the second example here, which I would say is a mid to late game example here. And as you can see here, yeah, a late game with Fire Rising Rebellion. What are you talking about, Alex? Yeah. Okay, it's maybe this is not the best video in the world, but yeah, just considering this is the mid or late game, we're having 3 Phoenix Flames in our graveyard. Maybe the Tunic was even destroyed by Zhao, who knows? But we are still having the gold token on board. So our hand looks like this. We're having 4 cards plus the Tome of Imperial Flame in our arsenal. And here are the 2 generators, so to say, for the Phoenix Flame. Because, of course, we are playing at first the Rise from the Ashes. Our next Ninja or Draconic attack gets +3, and we are returning one of the 3 Phoenix Flames from our graveyard to our hand. Then we are playing out Inflame. Yeah, only 1 point of value, but we are turning on Shuko for the next attack that has 2 or less base power. And we are getting also the Phoenix Flame, the second one, back from our hand to back from the graveyard to our hand. So we can activate Tome of Imperial Flame and pitch those 2 Phoenix Flames to it without losing cards. Of course, we have in this example a new card, like I said, the Art of the Dragon Blood, which has 4 attack. It gains go again if it's Draconic, and also the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn cost 1 less to play. That's why I think Brand with Cinderclaw in general will be a good card, or a good card at least to have in your deck. To turn, other non-Draconic cards into Draconic cards alongside having access to fealty, a really viable strategy. Because basically, either when you have a fealty, you can turn on Art of the Dragon Blood, or you just play out the Brand with Cinderclaw and turn on Art of the Dragon Blood that way. But let's just assume in this example, of course, we have played out the Rise from the Ashes and the Inflame. We are activating Tome of Imperial Flame. We are drawing 2 cards. And like I said, it really depends on what you're drawing here, but I'm just making up an example. We are drawing Mounting Anger and Spreading Flames, for example. And then also we have the option of cracking the gold with the 2 resources left of Tome of Imperial Flame. And we are drawing a Lava Burst, for example, here. Of course, we want to draw a Lava Burst. So then we have basically a new chain, that we are going with Brand with Cinderclaw, Art of the Dragon Blood, or maybe even we are playing at first Spreading Flames, of course, before we play Mounting Anger. And yeah, so Brand with Cinderclaw, Art of the Dragon Blood, it's the next one. Let's actually just make this example here. So it would just something like this, right? So this is what we would be seeing on the chain here. And looking at this and then counting up all the value points, this is not too bad actually. When considering 27 to 31 damage in total over the turn of the of this turn, that's not too bad. So Tome of Imperial Flame is really looking not that bad here to me. But like I said, it has the downsides also when looking at the meta. The Spreading Flames impact here is not that high, as we are used to having Spreading Flames at the beginning of the chain. Also, are you coming to this end state when you are playing against aggro decks that are much faster and putting out more consistent damage than Fire Rising Rebellion, or with Jarl or Jarl giving you frostbites and potentially destroying your equipment? Are you really able to pull off this combo? I'm not sure. Also, I think, of course, you can come to this game state by pitching Tome of Imperial Flame and having two other cards that you really want to draw together after you play Tome of Imperial Flame. That can be a way. Even considering pitching 3 cards after Tome of Imperial Flame because, maybe you want to really crack that gold alongside Tome of Imperial Flame. Or you're pitching Tome of Imperial Flame alongside with these Phoenix Flame generators like Rise from the Ashes or Inflame. And then also at the end here, I want to point out that, like I said, we don't know the new pool yet that we are getting with the Hunted, and that we don't know how big the impact with fealty and marking your opponent will be, or the impact that these new non-Draconic ninja cards will have on decks like Fire Rising Rebellion, just like the Art of the Dragon Fire, which basically is a lava burst. It's not really lava burst, but technically it attacks for 7, guys. Okay. My head is heating. It's a lot, but I think it's so interesting to talk about this, and I'm really pumped for this new set. And even it's a long time still until we are getting this. Not that long, don't get me wrong. It's 2 to 2.5 months when this video will release until we are getting the set. And also, like I said, we don't really know what the meta will look like until then. If fatigue will be super strong, if count your blessings will still be a thing. How big of an impact will Jarl have? I assume he will have a big impact because ice is up again, and he will the only hero who will be utilizing 2 elements at the same time. Also, maybe Fire is really bad because Syndra or Fang are just the more broken heroes. But maybe Fire has, for a small amount, an edge here and then goes off to Living Legend because he rasiers, as we say it in German. Yeah, we will see. I'm very, very interested. I'm super hyped about it. And I'm really appreciating that you've watched this video for so long. And actually looking at the clock here, I need to go off now because, my dad actually has a concert now that I will go to with my mom. And like I said, I'm really appreciating you sticking up for so long. Like the video, and like I said, if you're considering supporting the Fabled Caddy more, I would be super happy. Check out the Patreon and the YouTube memberships for that. And let me know what you think about all of this Draconic and Tome of Imperial Flame interactions in the comments down below. I also really like to do this comparison between Yu-Gi-Oh! With the pots and Flesh and Blood with the tomes. I may even will do just a singular video again on this. But I'm just super happy about it, guys. Thank you so much, and we see each other in the next video.